Okay, hello and welcome to the next in our series of Career Talk events. Today we are looking at product and product development and are lucky to have a fantastic panel for you today. So I'm from WSET School London, who's hosting this webinar, but I'm not going to be talking too much today, to be honest. That job is on Mags. Before he gets started, I just wanted to mention a little bit of housekeeping. Do feel free to say hi in the chat. It's lovely to know where you guys are and what you're up to. But if you have any questions for the panel, please pop those in the Q&A, as that's where they'll be able to see all of your questions. And we will be addressing questions at the end of the session once we've heard from everyone. So that's about it from me. Over to you, Mags.
Thank you so much, Julia. Hello, everyone. I was just getting really excited at kind of seeing everyone, people joining from all over the globe. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, based on wherever you are. Welcome to this webinar where we are just absolutely drenched with talent. I'm just going to try and tap as much information out of the team, out of the panelists as possible, because we've got Simon from Ridgeview, Dr. Anton Brock from Bombay Sapphire, if I'm not mistaken, and Julia Duckworth from Diageo, who do several different things in the wine and spirits industry. So if rather than me kind of taking your thunder in no particular order, if we go Julia and Simon, if you could just give us your elevator pitch. Who are you? What do you do? Kind of thing. 2 minutes, just give us a flavor for what you do.
Sure. Shall I kick off?
Please.
Okay. So as Mags mentioned, I am Julia Duckworth and I am Senior Innovation Manager for Diageo. I've been with Diageo now about 18 months and I lead a team of liquid developers and scientists who develop amazing, exciting liquids across our amazing sort of brand portfolio. So brands like Gordon's, Guinness, Tanqueray, and Johnny Walker, of course. Prior to that, I was a technical manager at Sainsbury's, where I looked after wines and spirits. And prior to that, so my background is more food science, and I kicked off my career actually in the States. So that's a little bit about me, and I'll hand over to, I guess, Anne.
Thanks, Julia. So hi, everybody, I'm Anton Brock. As Mags said, I work for Bombay Sapphire. I'm the master distiller at Bombay Sapphire, which means that I lead a team of distillers that make Bombay Sapphire for the entire world from our distillery in Hampshire. I'm really lucky to have that role. It's an incredibly fast-paced and complex role. I get involved in innovation. I get involved in basic operations across the drinks industry. But my passion always has lied in the sort of lane in innovation and creating new gins and looking at recipe and flavour development. My background is a chemist, so I did chemistry at university, and prior to working for Bombay Sapphire, I ran a small distillery in Southeast London, so a craft distillery in Southeast London, where I was the sole distiller. Just so everyone's, in case people aren't aware, Bombay Sapphire is actually owned by Bacardi, so I work for the global family-owned company of Bacardi that own a number of brands as well as Bombay Sapphire, Martini, Grey Goose, Saint-Germain, Patron, Angel's Envy, some big, brilliant brands. And Bacardi's been around 160 years, so it's a well-established company.
Fab. I know where to go for parties. This is kind of a who's who of what party invites to get. Simon, if you could just wrap up.
Thanks, Max. So I'm Simon Roberts. I'm the head winemaker at Ridgeview. We're a family business. My parents started this 26 years ago now. It's very much still a family business. My sister is our CEO, my wife, Marty, works in marketing, my brother-in-law in our facilities and estate. So we make our own wines. We also do some own label for people like Wine Society and Waitrose, and we also do a lot of contract winemaking. So people grow their grapes, they bring them to us, and then we make their brand for them. So we started off very small. We were 20,000 bottles a year. And this year we're looking to hopefully make about 450,000 bottles. So not quite the size of Bombay, Sapphire or Diageo, but we're getting there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Simon. I just realized I didn't introduce myself. I was so excited to hear from you guys that I just jumped straight into it. My name is Mags. I'm a WSET diploma holder, a wine educator. I teach WSET classes at Wines and Spirits Education Trust in Bermondsey. I also run an import business in the UK, so importing wines from all over the world, not quite spirits yet. That's a world which it's not quite my area of expertise, but hopefully I learn a lot from tonight and that changes. Yes, and I have dabbled in a little bit of grape growing winemaking in the south of France, a grand total of 600 bottles, which damn near killed me. So when you compare to what the panelists make, it's kind of what I want to be when I grow up, kind of list of people in front of me. So if we just kind of dive straight into the deep end. So Simon, I was reading a little bit about your background, about kind of studying marine engineering and then kind of making a switch across into grape growing winemaking. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because the internet is always the best sources of information. What kind of prompted that switch? And then have there been any kind of highlights or key turning points that have shaped your success in Ridgeview so far?
Well, the switch really was, so I was finishing uni and just deciding what to do. And my parents phoned me up and said, would you mind coming home? We've decided we're going to plant a vineyard. We'd like you to help out for the summer planting. So I sort of rather begrudgingly agreed. Obviously, none of us had any farming background at all. And by September, I'd completely fallen in love with viticulture and farming. So much so that I went to Plumpton College, which runs a winemaking course, which is very conveniently about 5 miles from here. And then very slowly, as we got bigger, moved a little bit more into the winery and realized that I had an absolute passion for it. And there was, we were on a trip to Germany, and our mentor took us to a monastery where they were still making wine. And we spent an amazing afternoon and evening tasting samples out of barrels, and absolutely was inspired by it. And the winemaker, I didn't speak any German, and so I was sort of trying to get involved in the conversation. And he said, "You have a really good natural palate. You should look at that." And so that's when I really moved more into the winemaking side and realised I had a real passion for it, and haven't looked back since.
Amazing. Anne, if I may come to you, I mean, obviously, strong chemistry background and all the accolades that come with that. Have you always known that you were going to go down the spirits? You were going to go down that distillery path. And when did that switch happen? What was the original Anne trajectory, and when did that switch towards distilling happen?
The original Anne trajectory was actually, I always wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to, so when I was younger, I decided I wanted to work for Médecins Sans Frontières, who an organisation that go out and work in disaster zones. And I can remember saying that to my mother, and she's a very shrewd woman. And she said, well, to do that, you'll have to work hard at school and get good grades in science. So off I trotted, and I got my good grades in science and went to med school. And about 7 months in, realised it was just not what I needed to be doing, not for me. I really wasn't enjoying myself. And much to my parents' absolute horror, I quit and became a bartender. Which, went down like a lead balloon at the time, but they've forgiven me. I went back to university 4 years later, just really to get a degree. And I went and did the subject that I enjoyed the most at school, which was chemistry. Loved it so much. I stayed on to do a PhD, but it was when I was coming towards the end of my PhD. Throughout my whole time at uni, I'd been running bars, working in bars. 4 years before going to university, I was working behind the bar, and I was talking to a friend, and I was just talking about I didn't know what to do with my life. I'd always wanted to be a doctor. Now I was coming to the end of my PhD, and they said, well, look, the only other chemist I've ever met is the distiller. And it was like a light bulb went off. Of course, tied the two sides of my life together, this passion I had for making drinks and my science. So I was super lucky that I had that conversation at the right time, I think.
Fantastic. I mean, it all seems like kind of being in the right place at the right time and taking advantage of opportunities which kind of present themselves naturally, not being scared of saying yes or, to an unknown opportunity when it presents itself. That's absolutely amazing. Julia, if I may come to you, how did you get into innovation, R&D? Give us a flavor of, how involved are you in that process? You mentioned kind of working with a team. How do you guys have that kind of light bulb moment? What if someone was going to expand the Gordon range, for example? What are some of the things that you guys will be thinking about?
Yeah, so I guess I'll kind of start with how did I end up in innovation and working in wines and spirits. So I was doing my sort of master's in food science, and professor who used to organize wine tasting said, actually, you have this natural ability. Sort of when you taste the wines, I really think you should sort of go down this path. And so off I went to Italy and studied at the University of Udine. And that was kind of really where my sort of passion for wines and spirits started. Returned back to the States and kind of really sort of decided, I don't really want to sort of be within food. I'd actually really want to move into apply this kind of knowledge of food science, but take that from food and apply it to beverages. So started my career in doing more sort of food science, new product development within the food industry. But I always had my eye set on, I want to transfer this to wines and spirits. So within sort of my role within Diageo, we work very closely with our marketing teams. We work very closely with the brand teams, and we'll sort of identify an opportunity that, for example, there are lots of people who actually don't enjoy gin, let's say, and how can we recruit new gin drinkers? One of those ways that we can potentially do that is through flavor. So flavor has been a massive sort of revolution for us within gin, and we've kind of seen that sort of translate over into other sort of categories as well. So looking at vodka, etc. So it's really we work highly collaboratively with our flavor suppliers. And as I said, our brand teams and consumer planners to sort of identify where are there gaps in the market, and that then presents an opportunity for us to innovate.
Fab. So it's really, correct me if I'm wrong, really about having your finger on the pulse and seeing what's happening in the world, what are people drinking, what trends are, and trying to capitalize on that. So let me kind of swing or segue back to you, Anne. So say your version of Julia, Bombay Sapphire, comes to you with, they've had this light bulb moment. It's like, this is what's going to change the world of spirits. And, they come to you with an idea. How do you, give us a flavor, an insight on how do you take that idea and bring it, to this is a final liquid kind of thing?
Sure. I mean, I think one of the things, and Julia will probably agree with me here, is that it's not one person who makes the liquid. And they always say it takes a village to raise a child. I say it takes a village to create a beautiful liquid innovation. And I'm very lucky in the fact that I get to work with Ivano Tenuti, who is our master of botanicals. So he works directly with our growers and works with all our botanical suppliers to find new and unusual flavors, and has this huge store of botanicals from which we can then draw from. But I think you picked up on something really key there, and that was the first thing that I had to learn when I came into this role. Was it's not just me sat around thinking I want to make a nice flavor, or oh, I quite like the taste of this citrus, I'm going to put it in a gin. It is, you get a concept, a consumer concept of an idea from somebody generally in the marketing team, that they've had this brilliant idea and it's something that they want us to turn into a product. And that's quite a different way of thinking about liquid innovation. It's quite difficult to go down that route. And really, that's a lot of trial and error. It's a lot of talking to Ivano and being really experimental, not be trying to get too pigeonholed in sort of stuck in ideas. And keeping that communication with the marketing team up. It's very much a sort of collaborative effort. You can't just go away and come up with this gin that you like and then present it to the world, unfortunately, much as I think we would love to do that. I think at Bombay Sapphire, we're quite lucky. We've got this DNA that's the backbone of our gin. And we're currently using that sort of as a basis for a lot of our innovation. We're creating a a series of special editions, we're calling them, where we're elevating the classic Bombay Sapphire recipe, bringing up some more contemporary versions. We actually recently launched Bombay Sapphire Sunset last week. So and that was very much, the marketing team came to us and said, look, we want to bottle a sunset. How do you do that? And
that's a job description.
So yeah, I mean, that was a really great sort of trying to think about what a sunset means to people. It's that idea of warmth and orange glow and sort of true relaxation. It's the end of the day. You've achieved what you need to achieve. You're sat there with a drink in your hand.
I'm sold. You don't.
But again, I've not said any flavors to you, and that's where the real skill comes in, I think. Teams like Julia's team, where it's like, what does that mean in terms of flavors,
right? Fantastic, great. And Simon, kind of bringing that to you now, the world of spirits and the world of mixers is completely different, kind of cousins to what you do in the vineyard. How does that kind of relate to you? Is there any correlation, or are you kind of slightly different, or do you guys do things slightly different from the spirits world? Because from my kind of limited experience of wine, we've got a window to grow the grapes, and then we've got to kind of make the wine with the grapes that, we try to grow as best we could. What are your thoughts?
So winemaking is a slightly longer, slower process than spirits. And so, from picking the grapes to when we're releasing our vintage wines is, 3, 4, 5 years. Mm-hmm. So to be reactive is quite difficult. So and as a young industry, it's important for us to be innovative and moving forward. So it's really interesting that we've got to look and think what trends are going to have longevity, because it's going to take 5 years. You don't want to start making a wine and then when you've released it, everybody's moved on to the next thing. So it's really difficult, but that's the best part of it, and trying new things and seeing what is going to work, what's not going to work. But also we have a wine style, we have a house style. So we don't want to move too far out of that remit. But the NPD and the R&D side of it, I just find really interesting. I love it. It's, and touch wood, so far, we've not had any mistakes. So it's all good.
Which can be really costly, again, from my kind of limited experience. If I may go back to Julia. So say you've come up with a concept, it's gone down Anne's area of expertise, they've got a liquid and it's come back to you, right, this is the liquid we're going to launch. What are some of the things which kind of go through your mind, or some of the steps which we might, the consumer might not think about, but what are some of the steps which we might have to consider when you're going to launch a new product into the market?
So as kind of head of innovation for Europe, we actually have 5 different markets for Europe. So we have to think about, is it actually going to be launching in GB? Is it going to be launching in Germany? There are different sort of reg requirements for each of those markets. What's the occasion? Is it the same occasion that beverage is going to be consumed in let's say, again, using the example of Germany versus GB? What's the serve occasion? So we have some fantastic bar and sort of brand ambassadors that we work with, who will also work with us as we develop a new liquid to come up with new serves. Is it kind of your lead serve, which is usually sort of gin and tonic, or are we looking at sort of other mixers?
Yeah.
Are there other sort of other cocktails that we're coming up with? So there's that sort of whole side of the process. We will work with our sort of master distiller as well. So we work with our Anne, as it were. And we also have a team of supply colleagues. So it makes, kind of in some ways no sense if you've got an absolutely sort of brilliant liquid, but you don't have the lovely packaging to go with it. So we've also got our design teams who will develop new artwork for that. And then we're also working very closely with our regs teams as well to ensure that the product that we're launching in that particular market is fit and suitable.
Fab. I mean, you mentioned such a crucial point, which being a careers kind of talk, I feel like I'm just going to latch into it. There are so many roles in wines and spirits where you don't necessarily need to be a wines and spirits person. We've had a lot of people, I've had countless emails come in and asking, how do I get into the industry? And I would say if you're a designer, the wine industry really needs people who've got a design brain on, who can look at a product and say, this product's going to work well in this packaging. If we're going for something premium, these are the kind of materials there's so many things which you could do in the wine industry. Designing wine label, it's a huge business. Designing spirits labels, packaging, is it going to be ready to drink from, package, or, ease of opening, all those kind of little things which you might not think about until you're in the park and you want a gin and tonic, and it turns out that you need a special device to be able to open your bottle. And then it goes, if only someone would have thought about that. And there's so many roles in the industry which are not necessarily kind of spiritsy or wine specific. Again, moving on, Simon, if I may come to you, please, sir. So a question which we had was, from a production point of view, is it possible for a complete novice to walk into a winery and say, I want to learn this craft? How possible is that? What kind of advice would you give to that person? Someone who's got no experience in the wine industry and kind of wants to walk into a cellar. We have tons of those, and tries to learn what you do. What kind of advice would you give them?
Actually, this last year was a perfect example. So harvest obviously is for quite a short period, but it's really intense.
Mm-hmm.
And we quite often get a lot of interns from overseas. Most of them have 2 or 3 vintages under their belt. It just makes the whole of harvest really easy. And that wasn't really viable this harvest.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone was UK based. A lot of them were local to here. So with the hospitality industry basically just closed.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people that had an interest in wine, but quite a few of them had never even stepped into a winery before. So, we had our core team that obviously were experienced, they've worked in wineries before, who were running the day-to-day, running ferments and racks and things like that. But for the pressing team and just general cellar work, they had never ever been in a winery before, never really worked in sort of production at all. And obviously there was an intense induction and training before we actually started, obviously. But they were just so enthusiastic, they loved it. 2 of them are still in the industry. One guy we've still got working here. Another guy, he's decided this is his career now. He wants to get into wine production. So it is possible, and it's a lot of winemaking is, it is part of the production process, and you can definitely get a stepping stone in. I mean, harvest is an ideal way to get in, definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And if I may just kind of stick with you for a minute, Simon. So say, we've got someone who's come in and has done a harvest with you. What kind of time span would you feel comfortable with saying, okay, you've worked with me for X amount of years, so I'm comfortable with you, I don't know, say running a ferment, for example, just throw up.
I think it really depends on the aptitude of the person. But I mean, if they're really engaged and interested, you can, certainly by the next harvest, they would be definitely, in the winemaking team. And because we're so close to Plumpton College, we've always taken on students while they're studying. And it's been part of our ethos is, mentoring and sharing knowledge. We're such a young, small industry that, a lot of the head winemakers now, we all went to college at the same time. We basically all grew up together, so there's that constant sharing and that want to make sure that everybody that's coming into our industry continues the job that we've done in making sure that quality is paramount in everything we do. And, that's part of the passion, is sharing that knowledge. And, if someone's keen to learn, why wouldn't you want to help them?
Absolutely.
And obviously, again, talking about Plumpton College, it's just down the road. They do lots of part-time courses. And most people that we have here, if they haven't done WSET courses, we actively encourage them to do so, because it gives them a wider understanding of all wine, spirits, rather than just concentrating on sparkling wine, which is, just one small part of it. So, it's easy to get in, and it's easy to, you could stay here and become, quite high up in the winemaking team, but it's that background and the chemistry behind it, and really that's quite important.
Fantastic. I think your last point there is just segued perfectly, because I was just kind of thinking, from an education point of view, what subjects, if I come to Anne, for example, please, what subjects do you think, someone who's got their hat on, I want to go and be a distiller, what subjects would you ask them besides chemistry, which is obviously a huge part of it? Anything else which really helped you on your journey? Are there any kind of other subjects which you wish you took at school which might have helped you in today's role?
I mean, I think it's quite difficult when someone's choosing to go to university to, I think a lot of people, certainly I felt when I quit med school, it's quite hard. You suddenly feel, I felt like I'd ruined it, I didn't work out the first time, that was it. So I don't want to say that there's anything specific that anyone should have. I think that science and engineering backgrounds, when you come into actual practical side of distilling and just the practical side of managing liquid and liquid movement around a process, they're always going to help you. That's always going to be stand you in good stead. But I really think, Julia's background in food science, I've got a couple of food scientists on my team. I think that's really important, because you've got a bit more of an overview of actually the liquid and how the liquid's going to behave and flavors interact, rather than necessarily the process. And certainly I think there's two things that are really, really important if you want to get into the production of drinks and the production of liquid. One is you've got to have passion, like Simon said. If someone's there, keen, willing to learn, open to learning, this industry is actually really, really friendly and really supportive, and people will help. I started in it by asking around, talking to people, learning from people. People are so willing, because people in this industry are so passionate about what they do. They're so willing just to talk your ear off and to tell you as much as they know, which is great. And then the second side is, if you are somebody who likes processes, that's important. This is not a job that you can do differently day in, day out, depending on how you're feeling or what you're up to that day, or there is very definitely that elements of following a process and seeing it through to an end. So I think just having an interest in those two things is really important. And then it comes down, when you're looking at the quality side of things, then it does come down to your palate and your passion for the spirit.
Fab. Thank you so much, Anne. I'm just going to stick with you for a second. Simon mentioned some really, really important kind of learning tools. Mentioned, for example, the WSET, being able to to get a good grounding. I certainly remember. I mean, listen, this is not me trying to, push the diploma on anyone, but I remember that when I was doing my diploma, I was exposed to the world of wines, which I'd never even considered. I was forced to suddenly taste spirits, and it wasn't an interest of mine, so I had to spend 6 months studying spirits. I had to spend 6 months kind of studying port and so on and so forth. Now, if someone was specifically interested in going down the kind of production of spirits, now they didn't want to do wine. So for wine, you can go down WSET, you can go to Plumpton College, you can do a Harvest. Does something similar exist for this kind of spirits sector?
So there's obviously the WSET level 2 in spirits and level 3. So I'm currently doing my level 3 at the moment, just for interest sake. So let's see how that exam goes. And I'm actually starting to put some of my distilling team through the level 2 and level 3, just because a lot of them haven't had any formal training in spirits. That is something they make Bombay Sapphire day in, day out, but just to have that grounding of other spirits and what's out there, I think is really important. On top of the WSET, there's obviously the IBD courses, so you can do your general certificate in distilling, so it's an online course, and again it covers very similar sort of areas that the WSET level 3 in spirits does, but from a slightly different angle. It's very much production focused, so it will take you through quality and packaging and other aspects of drinks production as well. If you wanted to go really hardcore, there's always the Heriot Watt Masters in Brewing and Distilling. Up at Heriot Watt. So my spirit quality technician in my distillery comes from Heriot Watt, and there are a number of people who've been through that course who have a good grounding. So they're the sort of formal courses that I'd recommend. But again, Bacardi actually offer, Bacardi in the UK, in terms of UK production, offer what they're calling their graduate scholarships at the moment. So they take on uni graduates on a yearly basis. They put you across a three-year sort of contract, you'll work in 3 different areas of the business. So you'll work potentially on the supply chain, or in packaging, or in procurement, or in production. Get a real experience, a year in each area, and it sort of gives you an overview of operations side of the drinks business and of the spirits business. So there's opportunities like that to look out for as well, you know, even if you don't necessarily have a science degree in your back pocket.
Amazing. That's, for everyone who's tuned in, that was just a wealth of information of places. No, it's so helpful, because that's the whole point of running this, right, where people can really latch onto things and go off and do research, and hopefully, you know, it can spark interest and
I mean, I think the other thing is sort of almost equivalent to the harvest. It's not quite the same as winemaking. We don't have that crazy time of the year where all the grapes have to get in. But we do have a burgeoning craft industry. You know, we've got a lot of small distilleries opening up, and they're always short of hands. So if you're willing, you know, potentially to front up tours for them, work in their bar, you know, do tastings for them, the amount you can learn just by being in a craft distillery with a small team around you is amazing.
I couldn't put that better. I mean, when I started off in Waitrose. I was an avid 16, 17, 18-year-old cider drinker and had no interest in wine. And I got put in the wine department. And for the first 2 years before I even ever set foot in a WSET class, I went down that avenue. Just by being in that environment and talking to the wine specialists, and just having the products surround you, you might pick up a bottle and you're filling the shelves, you know that a Pinot Grigio goes in the Italian section. You know, those are the kind of things you're gonna get asked in WSET level 2. And so just being in that environment, I can distinctly remember there were some questions in my test week. I don't remember covering them in the book, but just for the fact that I'd spent so long in the wine department, I just knew that, okay, this is associated with this country. So, you know, if you mentioned that word passion, if you've got that kind of appetite for it, there are opportunities to get in there. Your local bar, your local distillery, your local wine shop, we're always looking for hands on deck. Fab. Simon, if I may kind of swing back to you. Anne mentioned a couple of things involving kind of apprenticeships and scholarships. Are there similar things out there in terms of the wine industry?
There are. They're more for so I think we're in our second year of apprenticeship for the vineyard.
Oh, fab.
And the pickup for that was quite encouraging for such a young scheme. And we're just working on a winemaking or winery side of it as well. So, but I mean, not so much for the apprenticeship, but I mean, there are enough part-time courses that you can do that can certainly really benefit you, especially alongside if you've already got a job as a cellar hand. You know, these courses alongside it will help wonders. But you know, the experience is equally as important as education when it's on a practical side of things.
Fab. Julia, so hi, I'm going to come back to you. For anyone who's kind of planning their educational route, what would you recommend in terms of, it's kind of same question asked to Simon and Anne. What would you recommend? What, you know, if you were going back and advising a younger Julia, what direction would you nudge her towards?
Well, a lot like what Anne was saying, just to build on that, definitely having that background in sort of STEM, so science and engineering. I can actually say that I actually started my bachelor's degree is actually in psychology. And I remember at the time, my parents were very much like, you need to do a hardcore sort of science or engineering. And I actually sort of said, I'm actually going to do psychology because it's one degree I can think of that I will use every day of my life, understanding myself and understanding others and working with others. That's one of the things that's really important in innovation and R&D is that you're constantly collaborating with other functions, whether it's marketing. Within Diageo, we have a commercial science team who helps support some of our innovations that have much longer timelines, 3 and 5 year timelines. They are the true sort of science experts. We work very closely with the packaging team. We have our colleagues in supply. We work closely with our distillers. So in addition to the courses and disciplines that Anne has recommended, I always think being able to work well with others, I have done my WSET. I'm actually currently doing my diploma. My D3 exam keeps being postponed thanks to the pandemic, but hopefully
it's more studying time.
Yes, it's great studying time. So I would highly recommend, in conjunction with the science courses, also the WSET, in terms of being able to have that great palate and taste. Certainly some of the scientists and developers I have on my team have a very diverse background. We have some individuals who have PhDs in chemistry. We have some individuals who've completed their Masters in Brewing or Distilling at Heriot-Watt. And then we have others who've studied food science like myself, and others who just actually had like a passion for cooking, and they've taken that creativity and brought that into their sort of product development and innovation roles, which is really, really quite exciting.
Fab. I mean, kind of putting everything together from what I've heard from you three, it's yes, the passion has to be there. The commitment to hard work absolutely has to be there. From my limited experience in working in a vineyard, Simon, I mean, I did, a very small harvest in the south of France, and I ached for about 3-4 weeks afterwards. So there's no getting away from the absolute hard work that you're farming. Essentially, and it's heavy stuff. You got to lift, heavy boxes and heavy crates, and a passion has to be there. But to the last point that you made, Julia, it's about working as part of a team. So therefore, communication skills are very, very important. And sometimes things might not always go to plan. So then you got to have problem-solving skills. You got to be able to kind of think fast, think on your feet, and be able to solve problems as part of a team. And recognize that you're a small part of a larger cog, and everybody has to do their part to move things along. And if I may come back to you, a bit of a heavy stuff here, just something that occurred to me. Now, obviously, you've done amazing things for yourself, and you're thriving in what is, from what I see, it's a male-dominated industry. What are some of the traits which you have personally, which you think have kind of stood you in good stead, while kind of striving, breaking new grounds in this industry?
Oh, that's a big question. Thanks for that, Max. Yeah, I think, like you said, it is a male-dominated industry, but it's getting better and better on a daily basis. The diversity and the drive for diversity in the industry is really key. And I think particularly in the distilling world, where you're getting a lot of craft distilleries jump up, you've just got more opportunities, and there is a much greater mix of people working in the industry. I think one of the things I've always said that gets me through my days as master distiller of Bombay Sapphire is a certain resilience. And you mentioned problem-solving skills. When you go into production or into operations, things don't always go to plan.
Yeah, I know.
They very rarely go to plan. And so it's having that ability to not let it grind you down, to shrug it off, come up with a solution, and keep going. And that's really key, I think. But then personally, for me, how I felt that I've sort of been able to progress my career in the way I have was I did something that was very uncharacteristic for me when I joined the industry, and that was I stood up and spoke. And if I had the opportunity to give a talk, if I had the opportunity to attend an event and talk to someone, I would. And that's not something, if you look back in my academic career, I would be terrified of the thought of having to talk in front of people. But I've really made that choice, of that idea of saying yes to opportunities. I said yes to opportunities that normally would have scared me, but actually really helped me develop my career and gain new experiences, but also get recognised in the industry, which I think is important.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Anne. Because I mean, listen, diversity is something which has been on the forefront of what it's been all over the world. We absolutely, especially in the UK, we absolutely recognize that we need to kind of dial the scale back. We need to even the playing field. So I think it's quite a powerful message, which will definitely help someone out there. Simon, if I may, sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say it's super important, and I think companies all over the world are acknowledging the importance of diversity. At Bacardi, we're good, but we're not perfect, and I think we're striving on a daily basis to improve that. And I can see that from the internally of what they're doing, which is great.
Thank you so much. Simon. So let's kind of get to a day-to-day hat on of running a winery, of growing grapes, of making wine. What does a great day look like for you? What does a good day as a winemaker look like?
Well, I think the best day, I'll tell you what's a really good day right now is just sitting looking over our vineyard, and there's a deer running through the vineyard, which is quite amazing. But I mean, the best day of the year for me, after harvest, obviously, is our blending days, where we sit down with all the tanks and all the barrels, and go through everything, deciding which is going into which blend, where's going to where. I love that day because it's the one day that we have a creative input into what we actually do. But on a day-to-day basis, do you know what? Sounds a cliche and it's a bit cheesy, but I pretty much love nearly every day I come into work, even if it's there's a challenge. You're the one that's got to fix it and
fix it. Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And come up with a solution. And even though the process is the same, day in, day out, month after month, year after year, every day, not every day is the same. I do genuinely really enjoy every day coming into work.
Fantastic. I think that goes a long way to when you're operating in your passion. When you're operating in something that you absolutely love, even though you're walking into the office on a Monday, you know that you've got a backlog of emails, and you know that there was something wrong with the supply chain over the weekend, and you're going to a tough phone call. I think what you have as a fallback is that passion for it, that I absolutely love what I do. And so when you go in there, it's not seen as, oh my God, I'm going to deal with this. Like, okay, fine, it's a problem, it's a challenge, let's fix it. Julia, I'm going to swing back to you. What does a hard day look like for Julia? What's a day from hell look like?
It's actually going to be really hard to say, that it's what a hard day looks like, because I think you have days where you've got challenges. So there's not a day without its challenges, but I think a day becomes really hard when you kind of think you have to solve those challenges completely by yourself. And I think the best thing to do is when you are faced with a difficult challenge is kind of reach out to your colleagues. Certainly at Diageo we work with a team of experts, and I think the other thing about innovation is that whilst we think that what we're doing a lot of times is very new, oftentimes when we launch a new product, there will have been many mistakes along the way which have led to that a new exciting innovation. And so it's really sort of falling back on those learnings and applying those to any sort of challenge that you face. And again, just reaching out to colleagues. And I mean, everyone's really supportive within the industry. We work with lots of sort of third-party suppliers as well, and just kind of leaning into them when you do face a challenge, because it actually, when you do that, it ends up not being quite as daunting or quite as hard as it may seem.
Fantastic. Right. I'm quite conscious that we've been having so much fun, and we've got 15 minutes to wrap it up. I mean, listen, we've just got a wealth of experience and a wealth of expertise. So we've got a bunch of questions come through, and we're just going to kind of fire through them in the next kind of 15 minutes or so. I apologize, we're not going to have a chance to answer all of them. People have been, the audience have been really engaged and have filled the Q&A with questions. So just, I'll chew through them. So we've got one here from Adrian, which says, we live in a time of great uncertainty. Do you need to be a specialist in your chosen field? Where you need to be a specialist in your chosen field, but how do you remain flexible to cope as the market changes? I think that might be one I'll push in your direction, Julia, if you don't mind. So you're working with people who are quite expertise in what they do, but at the same time, you need to be also flexible to be able to adapt the trends. How do you manage that balance?
Well, I mean, I think in innovation is in a way, it's a role where you are always learning. So whilst there are new trends that sort of come up, you can apply your learnings in your sort of field of expertise to that. So we actually have a scientist within our team who is he's kind of our emulsions expert. We have scientists who are sort of experts in color. So when we're sort of developing a new liquid, we do rely on some of those experts. But in terms of staying on top of trends, we don't actually look at it as, well, we just rely on the marketing team for trends. Sometimes our new innovations will actually come from within my team, who are, we'll have a sort of away day where we're sort of just playing around the lab, where we take inspiration from going out to bars when we used to be able to go out to bars. We've done days where we've gone sort of foraging out in Italy, actually, and foraged for sort of botanicals and ingredients and created drinks and cocktails that way. So just in terms of, like, yes, you need to be potentially an expert in a certain area, but you're always learning, you're always sort of flexing.
Fab, thank you so much. Right, we've got another question here. Before we carry on, I've been reminded that this is promoted as running all the way till 7:30. So apologies, it's not me trying to get away from you guys. It's an evening, a long day. So we all carry on. We've got enough questions to keep us engaged. Simon, we've got a question here which I think is right up your alley. The question is, how would you approach a vineyard for working harvest? So what's your ideal kind of approach from someone wanting to work at Ridgeview? What would be the thing which will say, yeah, I think we'll give you a crack at it?
Keep talking about passion, but there's something there, but not necessarily a passion in grapes or in wine, but just showing that you're passionate about, that you wanted to get involved and engaged. We have quite a small team, so making sure that you're able to get on with other people really closely, because it's a really intense, period, even though it's only 4, 6, 8 weeks. But, I think we were talking about it earlier, just going to places, going to vineyards, just introducing yourself, the same with wineries. And, there's people always need help. So, eventually you're going to come in somewhere and it'll be the perfect time. And they go, oh, do you know what? We really do need some help. And come and join the team. Also, there's a lot of social groups out there on social media that always... there's always shout outs needing help and things like that.
Fab, thank you so much, Simon. And I've got quite an interesting one, which is probably going to be applicable for everyone, but I'm going to start with you if you don't mind. So the question is, apart from Brexit and currency fluctuations and COVID and every other thing that we've been hit with in the last kind of 12 to 18 months, what other challenges do you face? So again, what does a tough day for Anne look like?
So I think the biggest challenge I've got is if I can ignore COVID, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? And Brexit. The biggest challenge I have on my site is obviously sustainability, and it's this idea of getting to net zero. Historically, if you look at traditional distilling, it's not the most sustainable thing to do on the planet. And it's super important that we do change our working practices and look after the planet. So daily, it's one of the big things that takes up my time, is how do I do what we do but use less and leave the planet the way that I would like, for the future, and leave it in a better place. So looking at our water consumption, looking at our gas consumption, and even though we use renewable electricity sources, how can we reduce that loading of electricity and really work on self-generation or just reduction overall of our energy usage? So that's probably the biggest challenge I face on a daily basis.
Amazing. That's something which I wouldn't even have thought about. Simon, I could see you kind of nodding in the background in agreement. Did you want to kind of chime in on that point as well, in terms of, again, what the point of sustainability and so on?
So it's been a really key part of our business for a long time. But in the last 18 months, I've been quite keenly involved in setting up a wine GB sustainability scheme, which we launched last year. So it's very much just coming up to its first year of members. And I just think, our industries are, they do use a lot of energy. They certainly use a lot of water. And I think it is our responsibility, just moving forward, trying to find new ways to be much more sustainable. It's so important now more than ever, I think.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So let me just move on to the next question. So in terms of job, someone has asked, so I want to get a job in the wine industry, I want to get a job in the spirits industry. Where is the starting point? come to you, Anne. Where's the start? Where's that kind of absolute starting point? What would you recommend? You want to break, cut your teeth in this industry. Where's a good kind of breeding ground?
Well, I guess it depends on what your level of experience is. If you've got a degree or a master's from Heriot Watt, or you've got your GCD, or you've got some form of industry qualification, look at the company website. So Bacardi Limited Company, you can set up job alerts on that website, and it will flag you every time there's a graduate trainee scheme or an apprenticeship or anything coming on. So you can do that easily. But other than that, I've always said just reach out to people. So I was very lucky when I started. I reached out to people and I wrote to people, and the worst that's going to happen is they're just not going to respond. And the best that's going to happen is you're going to get a half-hour cup of tea with them. Obviously nowadays that would have to be over Zoom, but or you could go to industry events as well. I'm very heavily involved with the Gin Guild, and the Gin Guild run a number of events in the year where you can go and you can meet people. And there's the first time I ever went to a Gin Guild event when I was just starting out as a distiller, I found myself seated next to Tom Nicol, the ex-master distiller of Tanqueray, and he was brilliant. He just, like I said, had so much time for me and gave me so much advice. So it was really interesting just to see, meet not just people, but legends in the industry, and see how much time they had for people starting out. Don't be afraid to reach out.
Yeah, I'm just kind of chiming on that point. There is definitely more knowledge than there are people who want the knowledge. A lot of people in the wine and spirits industry, we cannot shut up if you paid us. We like to chat. We love to talk about what we're up to. If we are winemakers, they want to tell you the next cuvee they're working on. This is going to be launched next year or the year after. So we are generally a very social bond, and you should not be afraid to reach out to people, to send people emails. Reach out on LinkedIn. Like Anne mentioned, the worst they're going to say is they're not going to write back to you. And you might be able to, I've had opportunities where people have reached out to me, I've reached out to people, and it just so happens that you've sent that email at the right time, when it just so happens that they're looking for someone who's got your skill set, or they can put you in touch with someone. You know what, I just had this chat with someone, let me introduce you. And that's opened a whole world of opportunities for you. So we got a question from Juliet McGuire. Julia mentioned it was important to identify gaps in the market. So this is about trends. With your kind of innovation hat on, Julia, what kind of trends do you see picking up in the next kind of 12 to 24 months? What do you think what are we drinking more of?
Well, I certainly think that there's probably going to be more sort of trends around low and no alcohol. So I think there's going to be, whilst I think, COVID, there's, this idea of wanting to have this massive sort of escape and sort of release from this pandemic. I think that's kind of on one extreme you have that, but I think on the other extreme, there's going to be more sort of this kind of area around sort of moderation. And so no and low can kind of sort of fit into that quite nicely. So it's about kind of this balance between wanting to have it all, so kind of maximalism with minimalism, as it were. So I think those are some of the areas that we'll see some of that, some trends there. I mentioned escapism. So, we haven't been able to travel. So I think we will sort of start to see how can people kind of replicate that travel and escape experience in a drink or cocktail that they're enjoying, whilst really excited for sort of bars and restaurants to open. We have been in this sort of state of being at home and sort of making drinks at home for the past year. So I think it would be interesting to see, does that trend continue, or is there going to be this kind of massive release and everyone's just out and about? Don't know. So that's kind of a question for, I think, all of us to sort of think about.
Fab, interesting. And Simon, if I may kind of point that same question in your direction. I mean, I think Julia's come at it from a very spirits and low alcohol, no alcohol point of view. But obviously at Ridgeview, I don't know what the practicalities of making a low or no alcohol sparkling would be. So where do you think, when you have got your kind of your thinking hat on in terms of trends, where do you see the trend for what you're doing for the next kind of year, 2 years or so?
I mean, the whole no and low alcohol, I think, it's been moving around for a few years, and it's definitely something we've been looking at and taking notice of. But for our wines, for sparkling wine, there's definitely, you've got to keep the quality, which is paramount to us. So I mean, and the technology changes so quickly these days.
Yeah.
That, it's definitely something that we're looking at, and it's I think the whole dynamic of the drinks industry is changing, and you've just got to learn to adapt with it. And it's definitely that's the exciting part of the business, I think.
Agreed. Fab. And lastly, Anne, what are you most excited about for the next kind of 12 to 24 months? What secrets are you cooking up in the distillery?
The most thing I'm excited about is the 12th of April. I will be outside a pub on the 12th of April with a gin and tonic in hand. But beyond that seminal date, I think I was super lucky. I've been with Bombay Sapphire for three and a half years now, and I've joined at a really exciting time for the gin industry, and a really exciting time for the brand. So I mentioned that we just launched a product last week. We've got some other brilliant products in the pipeline, and there's a real drive for innovation. I think, having, like Julia said, we've all been sat at home, desperate to travel, desperate to get new experiences, and we've been putting that into our product innovation. So I can't tell you any secrets, I'm afraid, but I'm super excited that we've got coming down the line. So I'm sort of keep your eyes peeled for those. But for me personally, on a sort of personal side, I'm just super excited to be able to go to the pub, but really support the on-trade. I think no matter how bored I am of lockdown and how rough a time I feel that some people in my life have had, the on-trade have really been hard in the past year, and they're so crucial to our industry. So we need to do our bit, and we need to get out there, sit on the other side of the bar, and safely support them.
I think the worst things you could possibly do, if someone's saying your support is to go and have a G&T, yeah, I'll take that. Thank you so much. Simon, I'm going to swing back to you, sir. So obviously working with family-run business, where do you see kind of Ridgeview in the next 5, 10, 20 years? Where do you want to push? Where do you think is the next frontier for you? Where do you want to, where are you most excited about taking the company to?
I mean, at the moment, we're just in the middle of quite a big expansion for us, actually. So we've just got planning permission to double the size of the winery. We're looking at doubling production between now and 2025. So that's quite a bit to keep us busy for the next 5 years. And who knows after that? We're constantly evolving as business. There's lots of different options out there. And as we were talking about before, the whole NPD side of it, I just absolutely love. So there's always that side of it as well. I mean, every day is exciting. We're bringing on new members to the team. But yeah, it's always looking forward, being innovative and being at the front of the industry, I think, is what's really important to us as a family and as a business.
Thank you so much. We've got a couple of questions regarding Brexit, so I think that's something which it's that we need to kind of address. And Julia, how has Brexit kind of impacted your day-to-day, or has it impacted your day-to-day? What are some of the huge, where have you felt the impact of Brexit the most, and what are you doing to kind of mitigate that?
So I think where we have sort of been impacted the most day to day are sort of project timelines. So our markets have come to us and say, we want this new exciting innovation, and we want it, in 6 months, let's say. And working with a lot of our sort of flavour suppliers and botanical suppliers, they're all sort of outside of GB. For the most part. So we've experienced delays in getting flavors and ingredients in for our teams to sort of work with and work on. That's probably been the sort of, I would say, some of the biggest headache, as well as once we've created and developed a concept liquid, getting those out to the market for consumer sort of liquid testing has also sort of been has been a real challenge.
Great. Simon, as a British or an English, I don't know which you prefer, so pardon me. As a British or an English wine producer, exporting wines out into Europe, I imagine. Have you seen changes kind of post-Brexit? How's the world changed for you?
I think it's really difficult to really just to answer that properly, obviously, because COVID has completely shut so much down as well. But you know, we've built up really strong relationships with our distributors in Europe, and I think between us, you know, obviously there's bound to be more admin, there's going to be an added slight cost, but you know, I think we'll get through that. And I mean, nothing good's going to come of it, but eventually we'll get through this, and you know, it'll be the new norm. We'll get on back to exporting, back to market visits. You know, it just takes a bit more planning and the logistical side of it. It's just getting used to it, I suppose, and yeah, we'll get there.
Fab. Julia, I can see you nodding in the back. Not Julia, sorry, Anne. I can see you nodding in the background. Did you want to add, chime in on that?
Yeah, I think that the idea of the additional admin, slight additional costs, you know, from my perspective, from a day-to-day business, I've not seen a big impact because we're lucky enough to have, you know, we're a big company, we've got teams working on it. But I know that some of my friends and colleagues in craft distilleries have really struggled, the independent companies that really rely on those big orders coming in from the distributors in Europe, just seen a bit of a struggle. But again, it's quite difficult right now to really detach it from the effect of COVID, and I think it's going to be a good year or so before we can really look back and say, well, this was due to Brexit and this was due to COVID. So it's going to be an interesting thing to watch, I think, over the coming years, and hopefully, as Simon said, we'll get through it and it won't have too much of an impact on the business, on the industry as a whole.
Yeah, and I think on the positive side as well, you know, with my commercial hat on, sterling seems to be recovering quite nicely, and you know, we can buy things slightly cheaper. And yeah, you've both mentioned, you know, the fact that it's not just the fact that we've been hit with Brexit, but we've also been hit with COVID. So it's kind of that perfect storm, and not being able to quite identify just yet what's causing what. You know, is this due to the fact that we're not going out, or is this due to the fact that, you know, things have changed in the trading world? We've got another very interesting one here, given that, you know, Simon, you spent time in, I think, Germany you mentioned, and Julia, you mentioned spending time in Italy, if I'm not mistaken. If I may go in that order, Simon and Julia, someone's asked the question, what is it like to work abroad, travel abroad in different countries? They want to go out and do a winery and work a little bit in a winery. Any tips you can offer them, any kind of from your personal journey? How did you find that whole process, and any advice you can offer? Beginning with Simon.
It's really, it's just reaching out to people, I think. I mean, everybody, you know, traveling is one of the best parts of this job, I think. I absolutely love it, because you get to go all over the world and just talk about wine to other people that want to talk about wine, and that's great. And there's so many platforms now that are reaching out for people they need, whether it's for harvest or for bottling, or for vineyard, for pruning. So, you know, it's just reaching out, you know, and it's word of mouth is equally as important. You know, there's a lot of Facebook groups that are constantly looking out saying, you know, if you can get to this place whenever, there's 2 months work, 3 months work. You know, we're doing the same. We're actually just advertising today, actually looking for interns for the harvest in September. So
fantastic.
Yeah, there's always adverts and people like that.
Fab. Thank you. And Julia, what was your experience like, you know, traveling abroad and studying in university in a different country, and I'm assuming different language, different setting, different culture? How did you find that, and what advice would you give to, you know, we've got someone who's got that question, and what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so just to reiterate what Simon said, you know, just reaching out to people. So I was very lucky that my professor actually told me about this scholarship to go and study wine in Italy. And you know, he basically encouraged me to apply. The deadline was like 3 days away from when he actually told me.
Love it.
And I sort of said, well, there's no way I'm going to sort of be able to get my application together in time. He said, you will do it. And I'm really glad that he kind of stayed on me to complete the application. And I, by surprise, won the scholarship. So I had this wonderful opportunity to go and study for 9 months in Italy. I guess leading up to that, I didn't speak Italian at all. So leading up to it, I quickly sort of got a tutor and began to learn Italian. But actually, once you're in, in the country and you're sort of immersed in having to sort of work,
culture,
you do pick it up. And then in terms of like my current sort of role, if we're launching a new product in, say, Russia or Norway, we will actually go and spend time in that market to get really close to the consumer.
Interesting.
So that's one of the things that I've really enjoyed. I absolutely love travel, whether it's with work or personal life. Cannot wait to be able to travel again.
Yeah, I think kind of chiming on the back of that point, there was a question on the Q&A about kind of salaries in the wine industries, which I've tactically dodged. But what I will kind of say is, you might not get rewarded in the wine and spirits industry. I say might, not necessarily always the case. You might not get rewarded in terms of a sterling value, but there is a quality of life value attached to it. You will get to travel the world, and you'll get to, every single one of our panelists has mentioned, living the country, traveling the world, going out and spending, a couple of months in Italy. That's, that's blissful. And you're working, it's part of your job. So it might not always be a pound sterling thing, but there is definitely, you'll meet some amazing people. You'll eat some amazing meals. You will drink some amazing liquid. You'll be exposed to a world that some people only see from the other side. You kind of almost get that kind of behind the mirror, get to peek behind the curtain and see what's going on. So there is definitely that as a kind of factor to consider. Fab. So we've got a question for Simon specifically. So someone has just passed the WSET level 2, very eager to learn more. Where would you recommend in terms of sourcing wines to understand, a little bit more about, what information do they have available to them for someone who just wants to kind of get their teeth into, sink their teeth into kind of wine WSET knowledge and so on and so forth?
I think most winemakers love talking about wine. So if you can get in touch with them and just ask them the questions. I mean, we get asked questions, and I'm thinking, why would you want to know that detail? But they're just equally as passionate, and you think, well, fair enough. We don't, everything we do here, there's no real secrets. We're happy to impart most information. Obviously, there's a few things that we won't send out an email. But no, just we keep going back to it, but just reach out to people. Most people, whether it's distillers, brewers, winemakers, they just love talking about what they do. And most of us love imparting knowledge. So that's the best thing. And lots of tours. Go on lots of tours, visit lots of distilleries and breweries and wineries. Every tour you'll pick up a piece of information that you didn't know before, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Simon. I've got one which will be quite useful from both Anne. I'll start with Anne and then go back and go to Julia. So I've got a question from Victor. Victor says, Victor is he's in production and he wants to go into R&D eventually and become the next version of Julia. And he's asking, would you suggest that he stays in supply chain and then branch into something more technical? Or would you recommend actually switching altogether and going down to marketing? I want to come at this from kind of Anne's point of view, from someone who wants to go down R&D, creating new products. What do you think? Do you think it's more kind of prudent to stay in supply chain, stay in technical, or going all the way out into marketing? What are your thoughts?
I mean, if I from a sort of how Bacardi would view someone on that career path, and one of the things that Bacardi really encourages is that you get no matter what path you want to go down, they really encourage you. In fact, they say that unless you're prepared to try different areas of business, you can't, there's not just a path up, you need to dot around a bit and get more experience. And so, if I was ever not wanting to be the master distiller of Bombay Sapphire, I would have to go and get experience in supply chain or in marketing or in the commercial side of the business. So I don't think that moving out of a technical background would hurt, but I think if you do it within a big company, then you might have that sort of more direct career path. And I think if you're really aiming for something like Julia's job, and Julia will probably correct me, or Julia's equivalent in Bacardi, really you need to reach out and ask them how they got there and what sort of qualities that you're looking for. In Bacardi, there are certain there's almost a chart you can get. So if you want to go and become the Senior Vice President of Research and Development in NPD, they will tell you the different qualities and the different areas that you might need to have had some experience in to make your way up to that level in the company. So definitely not a no to get more experience. And I think if you want to go into innovation and R&D, having that sort of consumer insights and market trends and market understanding is only going to help you.
Thank you so much. Julia, did you want to sprinkle some salt in that?
Yeah, no, I would actually completely agree that there is no sort of like one sort of path into innovation and R&D. And we certainly within Diageo encourage people to try different roles within Diageo. So I currently have a gentleman on my team who said, I really actually want to have more experience in supply. Because he really felt that actually doing that would help to make him a stronger liquid developer, and he has aspirations to be a scientist. So he is actually currently doing a 12-month secondment within our supply team to learn more about supply chain and to see the other side of the innovation process. So once my team have developed that product, we then hand it over to supply. And so he is now being able to see how does that what's kind of the full life cycle of
that product,
innovation. So yeah, very, very cool. We also had a gentleman who was on my team who had experience in marketing, and so he joined. He was actually through the graduate apprentice scheme. So similar to what Anne was saying, they have at Bakari, you rotate between 3 different roles. So he had actually just done a marketing role before he joined my team and was a liquid developer, and really enjoyed liquid development, but wanted to go back to marketing. So, he's still part of innovation, as it were, but, he's not, let's say, on the R&D side of innovation.
Interesting. Thank you so much. Simon, we've got a brain teaser. It's kind of fingers and thumbs kind of question. So the question is, wine tasting versus wine making. Right, are they mutually exclusive, or does someone have to first kind of master as best you can the ability to taste wine before going into winemaking, or do you start making it and tasting it? And, what are your thoughts? Do you think you need to have that kind of clear vision, clear idea of I can absolutely taste wine, I'm as professional at this as possible, and then go down the wine route, or do you think it's kind of something which you can learn as you go? What are your thoughts?
I think you can look at it from both points of view. I mean, winemaking isn't just about tasting the different blends and creating a final product. Winemaking starts in the vineyards. Yeah. And so the practical side of it can take you a very, very long way through the whole process. But I mean, to understand how you get some grapes to a finished product, then for sure you need to have an understanding of wine and what wine tastes like. I mean, especially for sparkling wine, you're tasting a wine that isn't going to be drunk for 3, 4, 5, 10 years.
Exactly.
It's going to have bottle age, it's going to have lees age, it's going to be fizzy, and it's having that understanding of how that product is going to develop under that environment and over that time. So that in that case, it is critical, but to a certain standards, the practicality takes you a very long way.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that, Simon. And with that, we've answered all the questions, which is quite notable. The questions which we haven't answered are questions which have been answered over the course. So I don't want to keep the panelists here and asking you guys the same questions in a 100 different ways. And if we just went around the room and just had kind of last words from everyone, if we just started with Julia, kind of last words, for those we've got our audience watching, what kind of advice would you give them for those who are, again, looking to jump into your role, and as we kind of put a bow on it?
Well, I think we've actually kind of covered one of the I think really important qualities, apart from having passion, is resilience. So
yeah.
For me, I actually think every sort of rejection that I had actually opened doors for other things. And resilience is certainly something that you really have to have within innovation and R&D. As I sort of alluded to earlier, we've just recently launched Tanqueray Royale. And that was a product that took us nearly 12 months to create. There was a lot of sort of trial and error. There were things that just did not go to plan. But that, I think that is we're so proud and very excited about the product. But that is one of the things that I would like to leave participants with today is really sort of following your passion and being resilient, and just because you could reach out to people, the worst thing is you may not hear back from them, but sometimes doors close so that windows open. So
thank you so much, Julia. I think I'll just segue on jump on that point. Looking at the panelists, clearly you're looking at a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge, and people who are doing great things in the wines and spirits industry. And the temptation might be to see them as the finished package, or see them as, this person hasn't suffered any knockbacks. I can speak from experience that there have been times when I've applied for jobs and I've been rejected. And I thought, well, I was absolutely qualified for that. And there have been times which I've sat exams and not passed, and there have been times which I've taken blind tasting. So, that point of resilience, you've got to, and it also links with your passion. And that if you're passionate about it, you'll have that ability you need that ability to be able to get back up and get back into it, even when you don't fancy it, and even when it doesn't seem like, you're quite, your career is progressing in the direction that you want it to be. You have to have that kind of thick skin to be able to believe in what you're doing. And eventually, like Julia mentioned, one door might shut, so something else might open, and suddenly you're presented with this amazing opportunity. And any last words from you?
So I think I actually agree with Julia on the passion and the resilience, but I think it's also this idea of say yes. When an opportunity is presented to you, go for it. And sometimes, okay, you do have to listen to the look at the red flags and the warning signs, and but often an experience might come up for you, and you might not think anything of it, or you might not have been thinking that you wanted to do that, but just go for it, because every experience you get is so important. So halfway through my time running craft distillery, I got an email out of the blue from a guy who wanted me to go to Goa to make some gin with him. So I did, and I will never get that experience again. To be able to develop 2 gins near the beach in Goa was just absolutely incredible, and it felt a bit mad at the time, but what I learned in that experience, what I learned on that in that time was really important. So definitely say yes. But the final thing I think is, don't think that if you get Julia's role or my role, or you're running your own vineyard somewhere, don't think that that's where it stops. Like every single day you learn, every single day I'm developing, and every single day I'm learning from people junior to me, I'm learning from people senior to me, I'm learning from other industries, looking across to my colleagues in tequila and rum and vodka. So there's not really an end game.
Amazing.
Developing.
Thank you so much, Anne. I want to kind of again jump on a point which you made on that kind of always kind of be open to opportunities. From running a small business point of view, we have opportunities. We've had supermarkets or retailers have approached us with ideas which seem completely and utterly mental. You look at the idea on paper and you think that's never going to work. Then you kind of take a step back. Piece of paper and go, right, okay, for this to happen, what do I need? And you start piecing things together. And then going back to Simon's point, we're surrounded by the wine and spirits industry. Everyone wants to chat. Everyone wants to share expertise. Pick up the phone and ring someone and say, listen, I've got this problem. How would you solve it? And by the end of the day, you've actually got a solution to something which, when it started off, it was like, it would have been easier for you to just say no and push that away and move on to the next thing. But I couldn't agree anymore. Last words from Simon, please. Thank you, sir.
I agree with all the comments here. I think it's that excellent to strive forward and just constantly keep moving forward. There's always room for improvement. We're certainly in our roles, the 3 of us, the 4 of us, we're all striving to do better of what we can do. And I think that's the important thing, is not to stop and stand still, is to keep moving forward. You can always improve on things, and you shouldn't forget that.
Fab. Innovation, innovation, innovation. Thank you so much. Thank you to our wonderful panelists for their time this evening. really, really busy people. So thank you for making the time to be with us, and thank you for sharing your journeys and sharing your expertise and all the tips, all the advices. There's certainly, you know, Julia, you had that kind of burst of 5 minutes, which I'm going to go hunt once this is recorded, where sorry, not Julia Ann, you kind of mentioned a lot of kind of data for people looking to get into the spirits industries, things which I didn't even know. And I've been in wines and spirits for the last 10 plus years, and I didn't even know they existed. So thank you all so much for your time, and thank you for your expertise. And I will hand over to Julia Lambert.
Yeah, still here, don't worry. Yeah, just a second, the thanks that Banks has said. It's been really interesting to hear you all speak and share your stories and share your journeys and your advice, and judging from the chat, I think everyone else has found the same thing as well. And thanks to you too, Mags, for being our host and for extracting all this useful information from our wonderful speakers. So yeah, we'll round it up here, and we'll be back next month with another career talk. So watch this space. Thanks,
Fantastic.
everyone.
Cheers. Have a great evening, everyone. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Bye-bye.